Yes, we're back with another rider, another episode. Today we have the lovely Addie in the car, and she's a writer, a journalist, and much more. So we're just going to find out what Addie has to offer from her life experience and see what we can learn. So nice to have you here today, Addie. No pressure.
Thank you very much for having me.
So starting from the beginning, what were you like when you were at school, Addie?
I was super ambitious, high achiever, a bit of a little miss know-it-all, sometime teacher's pet, but that was for survival.
What kind of school did you go to?
I went to school in South London. I went to primary school in Stockwell, secondary school in Tulse Hill,
Okay.
college in Lewisham actually, so not far from here.
So why did you need to be a teacher's pet at times?
Sometimes you need allies sometimes in the classrooms, and you know them ones. I went to the kind of school where sometimes it'd be like two people are talking so the whole class is in trouble, but then you might get like certain exceptions or privileges because they know it was never you, like you was always the good kid. So it was always good to be known as the good kid, like I'm not a problem in the classroom, I don't bother nobody. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting concept. I never thought of that. How did your other students take to that? They must have noticed that.
I mean, okay, so in primary school I was bullied viciously for the first couple of years. At that time as well, that there was that whole thing of like being African wasn't cool, and my name is very distinctively African, like there's no mistaken. Like some people try to like assimilate and blend in and pretend to be Caribbean. I had no chance. Like there was no mistaken my Africanness. My mum would weave my hair with thread, which like really traditional African braiding styles. My name had lots of punctuation in it, or just lots of syllables, so I was distinctively African. And God forbid your mum cooked fish the night before, you carried that smell to school the day after.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's like there was no escaping it. Like I was distinctively African, and that just wasn't cool at the time. So at that time, and also I had moved schools quite a bit early, so I think by year one I had been to 3 primary schools.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
was that due to your parents or the bullying?
no, because so the first one was they closed it down to turn into a block of flats. That was like in Clapham South areas. Then the second one, I did get bullied. That one was like bullying by some boys, and they were closing it down anyway as well. Or they were rebranding it. It was at that time Hazelrig, which later became Kings Avenue. And as it was transitioning to Kings Avenue, my mom was like, I'm taking you out anyway. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Because that one, I was physically bullied. Like, so I think she was...
By boys?
By boys, yeah. So she was
do you
shaken.
have brothers?
I'm the oldest of 4 kids.
Oh, so if you're in primary school...
Yeah, the other two, one came later. I'm like 3 years and a couple months older than my first sibling, who's a boy. Thankfully now I'm at that age where I am very much, I will call my brothers on you and the two of them will roll up. But back then I was very much a lot on my own in this situation. So yeah, I moved schools again, and then this time it was more of a cliquey bullying. It was more like a tribal style of bullying where it was mainly the girls. And it's like the cool girl who does have the big brother who's also in school. You don't want to mess with her, because if you mess with her, if she decides she's not talking to you, nobody's talking to you. But then I think it was one summer you transition and you kind of find your voice and you decide, I'm not going to be bullied anymore. And I think I came back from that summer holiday, and I think even everybody else in the class felt a shift in my energy, because I grew up in Brixton as well. So you come back a bit tougher. You've mentally prepared yourself for what you're potentially going to encounter, and you kind of find your bite and you start barking back, and that's when it stops.
Was it verbally or physically you bite
that
back?
One, I should have physically bit them, but no, I had a slick mouth. I think that's what it was. I found my voice, and over that summer I developed a very slick mouth. The irony of it is as well is like I'm top of the class, and I think at that time it wasn't until that summer where I realised, for me at least, what a flex it was. So I would go there with them and be like, I know you ain't trying to bully me. Meanwhile, you're like bottom 3. Like, you should want to be my friend. I might help you raise your grades. Like, I came out with a slick mouth. you didn't really want to argue with me, you didn't want to go there with me or try and bully me because
no one wanted the embarrassment.
yeah, you didn't want the embarrassment. So in that space, we kind of, the non-verbal peace treaties were signed, and you know, everyone kind of gets on board and you all become friends as well. And it's always just, it's childish shit as well when you look back at it.
Would you say girls are more vicious than boys, or boys are more vicious than girls from your bullying aspect? Because, and I only ask that because girls carry on with that kind of bitchiness for ages and ages. But boys were, obviously, if they hit you, that's pain.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes away. Do you see what I mean?
I don't think it does though.
Go on.
I don't think physical pain does go away.
Maybe I'm just speaking as a male.
Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah, I don't think it does go away, because it's interesting. Like, we're speaking on the day after Tina Turner has died, and that's someone who lived through domestic violence, and you know, she has this documentary, I think it's on HBO, and you know, she talks about people kind of like portraying her as a survivor, and she's like, that stuff doesn't go away. Like, she's had more bad days than she's had good days, that it was a hard life, and that physical violence that she endured stayed with her. Obviously that's on a somewhat different level because that was a romantic partner, but I think, I don't know if I can necessarily compare the viciousness of...
Well, you were young as well, so the viciousness is probably 10 times more. When you're older, even though it's a romantic partner, you can walk away, but you choose not to for whatever. But when you're young, your parents say, if your parents say you've got to go, you've got to go. Do you see what I mean? So it's I would argue, it could be more traumatic as a young person.
Yeah, because I haven't experienced both, I don't think I can speak across the spectrum to say that one struck home harder than another. I do know that I think both of them had an impact on me. I don't think I ever distinguished between genders. I just kind of like wrapped it all in together and say bullying was bullying, the viciousness was vicious. But in saying that, as an adult, I've developed really amazing friendships with women. I'll say the bullying taught me a lot about women and friendships among women, the layers to it, the complexity to it. I'll give you that. Like, with the physical stuff with boys, it is, I would say, simpler. And it's very much a case of like, oh, I don't like you, so I'm going to punch you. Or I don't understand you, so I'm going to punch you.
You know why? Sorry to jump in there, but you know why I asked that? Is that there's a classic thing where your wife can say something to you and you think, why don't you just stab me? If you really want to hurt me, just stab me. Because that's going to hurt less than what you're saying to me now. Because there's a saying, a man should watch his fists. So a woman should watch her tongue like a man should watch his fists. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you said it yourself, your tongue is slick.
Yeah.
And for me, for instance, I never have a slick tongue in that sense. I could be physical, because it may be big and what have you, but my brain doesn't operate in that sense.
Yeah.
Where I think, okay, that's an interesting one. What would you say? You spoke about the layers of the women. What are those layers?
I would say that we're all battling various things, and then when we interact, all of those things can come to play. And I do think that socially, not that we're necessarily pit against each other, I think from the start women are pit against themselves. Like,
that's interesting.
Whether it's like self-esteem, not feeling like you're enough, how you look. I have a 15-year-old sister, and I see it even in her and her peers, you know, the conversations that they have. And I'm like, you're 15 years old, and, you know, these girls are talking about dieting and how they need to be this size for prom. And I mean, but even before Instagram, there was that same culture of like how you look and how you feel about yourself existed even when I was a teenager and when I was an adolescent growing up. So I think women are constantly navigating their own internal struggles, and that's just, don't get me wrong, everybody is, but I think ours is a lot more on the surface. That's why there's like $1 billion beauty industry that's marketed that women are propping up. Like, the beauty industry isn't thriving because men are buying all the Gillette, the best a man can get.
The best
like,
razors.
Yeah, or the best of the razors. And it's not because you guys are buying all the Lynx Africa that they can churn out. No, it's that eyelashes, and then it's the make your lashes big, make your lips bigger, make your eyebrows thicker, make your waist smaller, make your boobs bigger, make your hair longer, thicker, you know, be tall, be thin, be trends constantly moving, shifting. And then you're taught to now see each other as competition. Like, you're competing for men, you're competing for this, you're competing for a job.
That's really interesting you say that bit there. I had a conversation with someone today in the car, and it's based on something I heard on a podcast, and I was asking her opinion as a woman. And the way the podcast clip went is that men, older men, when they speak to younger guys, they school them. They say, you know what, I wouldn't do that, that I did that when I was your age and it didn't work out, and, you know, give them guidance. Where older women talking to younger women, they just see them as competition. And it's just, that just rings to what you're saying.
Yeah.
In that respect. What would you say about that statement? Is there truth in that statement?
Do you know what? I think there is. I would say I'm very fortunate in that the older women that I have in my life have just surrounded me with love and wisdom. Therefore, I mean, like, what are we really competing for? Men? And I say that with a massive question mark. Like, have I had my own experiences, maybe more so in the workplace with older women? Yes.
In answer to that question, it may not be competing against men. It's probably what you said yourself. That's, what do you call it? Self-esteem, self-assurance.
Yeah,
so
100%.
It's like, I look good. I know I used to look good when I was 20 or 16 and blah, blah, blah. Even though I'm in my mid-30s or 40s now, I still really have it.
Yeah.
Or I want to believe I have it.
Yeah.
So anybody else I'm going to put down who rivals me, or I'm going to look at. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think there are, that archetype of woman does exist, unfortunately. And I also think they fall into different categories. So I don't want to speak too generally.
General, yeah.
There are those types of women who do look at younger women with a certain degree of envy. Similarly, there are younger women who are very trivializing or unkind to older women, and not acknowledging that a lot of the things that we benefit from older women is because older women came before us and paved the way and knocked down those walls that allowed us to be able to, whether it's like wear mini skirts in certain environments, or the choice to wear trousers in certain environments, be all dolled up or not be dolled up. Like, there are women who came before us that knocked down doors and made these things possible for us. So I think the rivalry can go both ways. I gravitate towards older women who are confident, who love themselves, who embrace themselves at their age, and just exist as like beacons of wisdom. I went to an all-girls school, which I loved. My head teacher was a woman who I greatly admired, a black woman who taught us a lot about confidence and self-esteem. She would read Maya Angelou poems in assembly to us. It was a predominantly black school of black women, and she would constantly impart wisdom and lessons in us. And those are the type of older black women that I've always found in my life personally.
You seem well grounded.
I have to be.
I like it. So you went from school, you went to college.
Yes.
Or what did you do in college?
I studied A-levels. I did English, language, literature, politics, business, critical thinking, and graphics, just to be fun.
Explains, like, how many A-levels did you do?
I did 5 ASs, and then I dropped 2 to do the 3 because I was overworked and stressed out. So I finished with 3 A-levels in total. I did politics, the 2 Englishes, and business, got 2 A's and an A star. Went on to study politics at the University of Bristol. And I've worked as a writer, journalist, and I've also done some political lobbying. I've worked in PR, media generally.
What was that like at uni, Bristol, studying politics? Because I'm sure you probably got definitely got a lot of the middle class and middle upper class who study politics, because they study things that they just luxury degrees, I call it, where they don't really have to think about a future. I'm just going to study this. Daddy's paying for it.
Yeah, no, but I would definitely say Bristol was the first time I experienced what we now describe as culture shock. Because again, I grew up in South London. I went to a very black primary school. My head teacher was black. A very black secondary school. My head teacher was black again. My class, if I show you my class photos, there are maybe 2 or 3 non-black faces hovering amongst the sea of black girls. You know, pretty much every other teacher was Jamaican, and I'm talking fresh from Jamaica. And literally, we used to joke that there was a pipeline straight from Jamaica into being a teacher at our school. And I grew up in Brixton, so I grew up in very black environments. Same with my college. Christ the King was very Nigerian. I went to a really Nigerian church. This was the whitest experience I had ever experienced. We used to play this joke. I was like 2 or 3 black girls on my course, and I remember on my graduation day, I was the only black woman who received a degree in my particular ceremony. And there was one black guy who received a degree, who also happened to be my friend. He got his degree for engineering. So I think they had done the politics classes and the engineering classes, maybe like philosophy or one more. And out of like the 600 people who graduated at that particular ceremony time, was the only black woman, who was the only black man. I remember my mum pulling me to a side, and she was like, she's so shocked. Like it never dawned on her that this was the environment that I was in. It had its moments. There were times when it was actually really, really, really challenging. That first year was particularly challenging.
In what sense?
I felt out of my depth. I definitely felt like a fraud.
What, with the studying or with the...
With the studying, with the environment. I was someone that had never struggled academically. Like, I can confidently say that I was a cocky little shit to some extent. Like, I wasn't the person, like, struggling to recall information. I tested really well. I had a great memory. I can read text and absorb it and apply it. I'm an academic dream. Like I think on my politics paper, I literally got 100%. Like I didn't drop a single mark. And I remember my politics teacher telling me she was going to request my paper so she could use it for her next class when they're preparing for exams.
What was your politics paper about?
Oh, I can't remember. This is my A-level politics. I'm much older than you think, by the way. Like, I think...
How old do you think I think you are?
I think you think I'm in my 20s.
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're happy.
Yeah, so that was a longer time than I can recall. But I think at that time, what we were studying in politics, like, I remember we studied Britain and the European Union. Hilarious. We studied all the ologies.
What I'm getting at is when you went to uni, you had your debate, you're doing your politics and all of those kind of things. Did you find that a lot of people had opinions, but they did not know anything of the real situation that you're having to debate?
No, I don't think it was that. I think, for starters, I felt invisible in my classes. The same way that I recall talking about finding my voice one summer and coming back to never be bullied again. I think in this environment, I lost my voice again. I felt out of my depth. I felt like a fraud, like I didn't deserve to be here.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, so a lot of imposter syndrome. Mainly so that first year, I felt really isolated. I didn't have any of the cultural touch points that I had in my day-to-day life that kept me grounded or that kept me joyful as well. Whether it's those walks to Brixton to grab something and you can hear the Rastaman preaching in front of Iceland, or the music coming from Red Records. Like, I didn't have those moments. Like, the city felt cold to me at times. I didn't have my community. I couldn't just go to my friend's house or go see my cousin in Angeltown and just chill, eat some food, and you have one conversation and you laugh and you feel like yourself again. I didn't have a lot of that.
Why did you go to uni so far away? So
funny enough, again, my politics teacher really encouraged me. At that time, Bristol was one of the best universities in the country. I had always been told, you have to go to a Russell Group university. You have to go to... This was instilled in me from secondary school. Like, at that time, I wasn't even thinking about uni. I remember our deputy head teacher would frequently come and visit my class because we were separated by academic ability. So we were what they called the top set. And everyone would come in and give us little speeches about how they had high hopes for us, high ambitions for us. This is the class we expect: Oxford, Cambridge, Russell Group universities. We anticipate you girls are going to be the ones that are going to be MPs and doctors and lawyers. There was a lot of ambition instilled in us and expectation. So for me, from the jump, I knew I didn't want to stay in London, for instance, because again, when you're the oldest of 4 kids, you feel constantly under pressure. And I was like, this is my opportunity to break free, even if it's just for 3 years. Love my family, but I also wanted some space to kind of discover who I was outside of being the firstborn, the big sister. And at this time now, I've got 2 brothers and a little sister in the mix. So I'm the oldest of 4. It's me and my mum kind of riding it out. And I wanted some space to focus on school, have my own space, live that university experience. So I looked outwards. I applied for Birmingham, Bristol, Loughborough. Brunel was probably the closest to London that I applied for. But out of all of them, I remember my politics teacher, she was like, oh, you'll do so well at Bristol. She's like, that's a perfect institution, really good school. And then I think at that time they were like, yeah, Tony Blair's son went there, and you know, they're all gassing it up to you, and you don't know what any of this stuff really means in the grand scheme of things.
You happy you went there?
Yes, because I believe everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't change that. I did make friends who I'm still friends with to this day, and I'm very grateful to have them in my life. It taught me a lot of lessons, mainly that I can survive. Not that I had any doubts I could, but I'm made of stronger stuff than I thought to make it through. Because Bristol, it's not surprising, like not a couple years ago there were a spat of like student suicides, and I remember in my group chat with some of my Bristol friends, like it's like, oh, another one. And one of them in particular that really struck a chord with me, or I really felt it deep. It was a young black woman who was like in her 3rd year of medical studies.
Yeah, that's common in medical, same in guys.
And I was just like, we probably would have been friends with her. Like, we probably would have known her. And I remember thinking, man, I wish she had what we were able to find. That's not to say that maybe that would have saved her, but I can imagine feeling so isolated and so alone, because in Bristol there's this massive suspension bridge. Walk up there and there's all these signs, you know, kind of like saying, if you're
Don't
feeling
jump.
alone, yeah, literally, don't jump.
Come and get a hug kind of thing.
Yeah, in short, don't jump.
Is that bad?
The messaging?
No, no. I mean, is that bad that they have to put signs on the bridge?
No.
Well, it clearly is. If
Oh,
they
is it that bad?
Yeah, it
Oh,
must be
I
that
think
bad if
people,
they put signs on the
bridges seem to be a go-to spot. I don't know what the stats say as far as like what the choice is. But
I hear you.
yeah, I think, would I think any bridge? No, I don't know if it's on every single bridge you'll find it, but yeah, on this particular bridge, yeah, I can see why they'd put it there.
Okay, I hear you. So you left and you went into journalism. Tell us about that.
It was a much more bumpy journey than straight into journalism.
And sorry, just to jump in there, you said about you were lobbying. Who were you lobbying for?
So I was working for a charity. It was about getting young people involved in politics, and we wanted a particular amendment to, I won't name the company because I don't work for them anymore, but we wanted a particular amendment to a bill, in essence, to get university students automatically registered at the point of enrollment.
That makes sense.
Right? You would think that just makes sense.
I think when you give out, everybody turns 16, they get their NI,
Yeah.
you automatically get enrolled.
Yeah. So we were trying to get that passed through. So we worked on that. We worked on just general like voter registration campaigns was what we worked on.
I take it that didn't get through.
No, it did not.
But you know what? Certain parties don't want.
Don't want young people voting, of course.
Because they know they won't vote for them.
Yeah, pretty much. But we put up a good fight, and we did a lot of back and forth on, you know, drafting
You
the
know
wording.
what? You need to get a grime artist like, I'm not sure if he's grime.
We actually had a lot of grime artists.
What's
on
that
support.
guy? The Ghanaian guy? Tall, quite.
Stormzy.
Yeah, get him to tell all the kids they need to vote.
I mean, he did speak about voting at the time when
No,
there was
he
an
needs-
election,
He
when it
needs
was
to do a rap or grime or rap or whatever he does about it. Yeah, I think so. I'm a bit older. Yeah, one of those things.
Yeah.
In order to get them going. Okay, all right. So you did that, was your lobbying, and then you went into journalism.
So it was a bit more of like, I was in journalism, then I left to do that, then I went back to journalism, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
I used to write for the Voice newspaper. That was my first proper journalism job.
Is it true that Murdoch owned that paper?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Rupert Murdoch does not own the Voice.
No,
The Voice was owned by the Gleaner Company.
back in Jamaica?
Back in Jamaica, yes.
I wonder who owned them then. That's the question.
I believe they're owned by a family.
All right.
Like a Jamaican family, but don't quote me on that. And then I think it was later acquired by Jamaica National, the building society, who then took over at the Voice.
So with this journalism, what was it like being a journalist, and what kind of things did you write about?
Well, my entry point was politics. So I came through, I was kind of tasked to write about politics from a youth perspective, from a black perspective. I got to do lots of really cool interviews. Interviewed David Lammy, Diane Abbott, Sadiq Khan.
What do you think of Khan?
I declined to comment. No, I'm joking. Once upon a time, I did feel like he felt more like a celebrity politician. Sometimes I see his tweets and I'm like, my bro, you're literally the mayor of London. Like you say these things as if you're not the mayor of London. You're literally the mayor of London. I think he's benefited from the fact that London is very much a cosmopolitan city that's completely loyal to the Labour Party. I think at that time it was him versus Zach Goldsmith, and they ran such a dirty campaign that it just...
What, the Labour?
No, the Conservatives.
Okay.
Because Zach Goldsmith at the time, prior to the campaign that they ran, was kind of treated like we know he's a Tory, but we still kind of like him because, you know, he's big on the environment and he's not like the other Tories. Like, he seems like a stand-up guy. And I think maybe for a moment people were willing to put aside the blues and the reds and put aside any sort of like party affiliation and truly vote purely based on a candidate rather than a party necessarily. But the campaign that they ran, I remember at the time, was just so mud-flingy. And I think for the most part, the general feeling in London was, you really insult our intelligence. Like, you're trying to do dog whistle. We're not the rest of the country. Like, this is a cosmopolitan city. You can't run that type of campaign in London. So I think that's what shot him in the foot and made him lose it. But overall, Sadiq's an interesting fellow. I've interviewed him on more than one occasion. He bought me a patty in Brixton one time. So
I don't like him.
Ouch.
He's caused problems with the roads, and I'm a driver.
Oh yeah, and I know drivers. I think right now, I don't drive in London for a reason. This is why I'm in your taxi and not in my own car.
He's the kind of person, if I saw him being beaten, I'd just sit by and watch. He's cost me too much money.
Fair.
And he doesn't listen, so I'm not interested in him. But that's my one-pid gripe in that note. On the final notes, we're coming to an end.
Yeah.
What have you learnt about your whole life experience from school, dealing with the cultural difference within the black community, to where you are today in the politics and the journalism world?
Community is everything. And I don't mean community in a cliquey sense. I don't mean community in like, oh, who's popular and who can I align myself with. I mean it in the truest, rawest sense, where we meet each other at a place where it's cross-generational, it's different economic groups. I do think we're severely disadvantaged by the disappearing communities. I think my best days, my strongest days, my happiest days have always been when I've been a part of a community.
Okay, that's good. Well, thanks a lot for that.
Thanks for having me.
And we wish you well.
Thank you.
We hope that episode enhanced your life. We post an interview every day, as well as vlogging on our social media channels. Don't forget to subscribe to get our latest episode.